Well, good morning, everyone. Welcome to this great Tuesday, August 21st, 2018 full board meeting of the McLean County Board. I'd like to call this meeting to order. First order of business pursuant to Section 20-20C2A of the McLean County Code. Member George Wendt has requested to attend and participate in this meeting remotely. Proper notice was received in advance with board rules. Is there any objection to Member Wendt attending and participating remotely at this time? If none, with no objection, then I deem this request to attend and participate remotely approved. Good morning, George, and welcome. We're waiting for George to get on before we start. Okay, thank you.
You're on the air here. We're just getting ready to start the meeting, so everybody can hear you. And the chairman has already read the notice for you to participate in the meeting without objection, sir.
All right.
Good morning, Mr. Wendt, and welcome to our meeting. Thank you for joining us.
Yeah, well, good morning.
We will now go on to item number 2. Everybody please rise for the invocation by Member Dave Selzer.
Heavenly Father, we come before you today to seek blessings on the tasks before us. Bless our efforts with clear insight, our deliberations with wisdom, our work with clarity and accuracy, and our decisions with impartiality. We humbly ask for your truth, understanding, and wisdom in all matters. Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Would the county clerk please call the roll?
Scott Murphy.
Here.
Eric Rankin.
Present.
Carla Robustelli. Susan Schaefer. Here. Ryan Scritchlow.
Here.
Paul Segabiano.
Here.
David Seltzer.
Here.
James Solner.
Here.
George Wendt. George.
I'm here.
Lori Wilrab. Josh Barnett. Jacob Beard. William Casely. Don Cavallini. Chuck Erickson. George Gordon. Mark Johnson. Randall Martin. Catherine Metzger. John McIntyre.
Here, we have all 20 members present. We do have a quorum, and we will move on. There are no members of the public that have asked to appear this morning, so we'll move on to item number 6, the consent agenda. You have that in front of you. What say?
Move be approved as presented.
Motion by Member Segoviano, second by Member Casely to approve the consent agenda as presented. I would like to remind you that on item D, transfer ordinances requires a 2/3 vote. Is there anyone that has a dissenting vote for item D at the time? If not, are there other items? Member Schaefer.
I'd like to pull C1, A, B, and C off, please.
Items 1, A, B, and C. Okay, well, we pulled off the consent agenda and moved to land use. Okay, thank you. Sure. Any other items or any other as far as pulling off anything from the agenda? If none, all in favor of the consent agenda as amended, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion has carried. Next, we move to, there are no resolutions today. We will move on to item number 7, Executive Committee, and we'll start with Mr. Vice Chairman, Mr. Solner.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Executive Committee has one action item today, 7A1A, Chairman's recommendation on appointment of the McLean County State's Attorney position. I so move that.
There's no motion to move to current time. If you will turn the floor back to me, sir, I will.
You are welcome to take the floor, Mr. Chairman, if you say so.
Thank you. Section 2511 of the Illinois Election Code controls the appointment after the vacancy in any elective county offices. The statute mandates that the vacancy shall be filled within 60 days by appointment of the chairman of the county board with the advice and consent of the county board. Section 2511 also requires the appointment to come from the same political party as the person vacating the office. A question then becomes, what is a vacancy and how to decide when the clock begins to run on the 60 days? Section 25.2 of the Illinois Election Code set out 8 different events that can create a vacancy in an elective office, including resignation by the elected official currently holding position. Section 25.2 further states that an unconditional resignation effective at a future date may not be withdrawn after it is received by the officer authorized to fill a vacancy. Such resignation shall create a vacancy in office for the purpose of determining the time period which would require an election. The resigned office holder may continue to hold such office until the date or even specified in such resignation, but no longer than the date in which his successor is elected and qualified. These are the circumstances before us today. On August 8th, 2018, Jason Chambers submitted a letter of resignation to me indicating that his resignation would be effective on August 21st, 2018. Prior to his being sworn in as a member of the Judiciary Council. As a result, the vacancy is created today, August 21st, 2018, and I have 60 days from this date to appoint a new state's attorney, and our board does, with the approval and advice and consent of the county board. I'd like to publicly take a moment and say thanks to Mr. Chambers for the job and the service he's done for our county, and a job well done. Well, I think most of you know, and I want to assure you that because of these special circumstances and because of the importance of this position, I conducted an evaluation these last 12 days of the candidates that have applied. We had 5 applications, and the interview process very intently, very thoroughly, and invested an extreme amount of time, thought, and personal commitment into trying to make the proper recommendation for your approval. I know that all of you did the same. I want to thank you for your input, thoughtfulness, and advice. In addition, and I certainly hope that the 5 candidates would concur, I had a very positive experience during this time spent with each candidate. Personally, I'd like each candidate very much. I sincerely appreciate their abilities, commitment, and service to our state's attorney's office that they are now providing and or have provided in the past as well. And so to our 5 applicants, Ms. Jane Foster, Mr. Chris Graham, Mr. Don Knapp, Mr. Mark Messman, and Mrs. Jessica Woods, my sincere thank you for your interest and service to our county. Thank you. It's been a daunting job for me, as I'm sure any of these candidates could admirably serve as state's attorneys in many of the counties in this state. It's become evident to me that I should do more than assume a role as an average voter as I went through this process. It wasn't a popularity contest with me. It was a matter of me making a decision and doing the proper research and putting in the proper time and commitment to come up with who I thought was the best candidate to recommend to you. It's been my job to find this candidate that can serve in this particular situation, in this particular county at this time and circumstance. I've tried to be objective as possible. Yesterday afternoon, after 12 days of studying this, and after over 20 contacts and interactions, emails, letters, phone calls, meeting people for conferences and coffee and so on with other individuals in this, members of this public, after listening and reviewing the appearances in front of our executive committee, after lengthy and in-depth interviews with each applicant, and I would delve into many, many questions at that time, and they spent quite a bit of time with me, and much interaction and polling with all of you board members, and thank you for all of your input, and I want to thank you for your sincere approach to this as well. It's been quite a journey for me as well. Yesterday afternoon, I reached a decision and recommended you the appointment of Mr. Don Knapp for State's Attorney, and would entertain a motion from the floor at this time to approve. Mr. Erickson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would make a motion that Don Knapp be submitted as the new state's attorney.
There's a motion. Is there a second?
I second that, Mr. Chairman.
Member Segoviano seconds. There's no motion.
Nomination is on the nomination and approval.
There's a nomination and approval, I'm informed by our counsel at the time. Robert's rules specify that a motion to nominate is undebatable, unamendable. I'll start over.
Yeah, hold on for a second, please.
We'll continue. I'll start over. Robert's rules specify that a motion to nominate is undebatable, unamendable, and cannot be reconsidered. Because we're not required to strictly adhere to Robert's rules, it's well within the discretion of the chairman to entertain discussion on the motion from individual board members, and I will do so. I've chosen to do so. I'm now going to open the floor for discussion of my nomination. Please note that your discussion must be limited to whether you think the person I have named should or should not be nominated. It is improper and out of order to engage in discussion of other candidates or individuals who applied for this position and whose consideration is not currently before this board. Again, please restrict your commentary to the persons I have nominated. Is there any discussion on the motion at this time? If none, I will call for the question. I will take a... So other news will go on elsewhere.
Yeah, stay with, we lost you a couple times, George. Just hang with us here, okay?
Okay, without objection, I'll take a voice vote on my recommendation. Is there objection? If none, all in favor of appointing Don Knapp as state's attorney, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? The motion has carried. We will move on now to the... thank you. Congratulations, Mr. Knapp, and again, I sincerely want to thank all the applicants for this position. We'll move on to the report of other standing committees. Justice Committee, Chairman Gordon.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The Justice Committee brings 5 items for action to the County Board this morning. Pardon me. Item B1A, request approval of the Violent Crime Victims Assistance Act grant with the State of Illinois Office of the Attorney General and McLean County State's Attorney Office, found on pages 67 through 85 in our packet, and I'll move that.
There's a motion by Chairman Gordon. Is there a second? Second by Member Cavallini. Comments or questions or discussion? If none, all in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion is carried.
Item B1B, request approval of an emergency appropriation ordinance amending the McLean County Fiscal Year 2018 Combined Annual Appropriation and Budget Ordinance General Fund in the Court Services Department, found on pages 86 through 87. This is an emergency appropriation ordinance requiring a 2/3 vote, and I move that.
This is a 2/3 vote. Motion by Member Gordon. Is there a second? Second by Member Schaefer. Comments or questions or discussion? If none, all in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Are there any dissenting votes to be recorded? If none, then it passes unanimously. We'll move on.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Item B1C, request approval of an emergency appropriation ordinance amending the McLean County Fiscal Year 2018 Combined Annual Appropriation and Budget Ordinance for the Circuit Clerk Department, found on page 88. This similarly is requires a 2/3 vote, and I'll move it.
This also requires a 2/3 vote. There's a motion by Chairman Gordon. Is there a second? Second by Member Casely. Comments, questions, or discussion? All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Are there any dissenting votes to be recorded? If none, the motion carries unanimously.
Item B1D, request approval of the Violent Crime Victims Assistance Program Grant Agreement between the State of Illinois Office of the Attorney General and the County of McLean for the Court-Appointed Special Advocate, that is CASA program, found on pages 89 through 103, and I'll move that.
Motion by Chairman Gordon, second by Member Barnett. Are there comments or questions? Let the record show that Member Critchlow will be abstaining for voting on this item and the following item E as well. Thank you, sir. All in favor of the motion as presented, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? The motion is carried.
Our last item this morning, Mr. Chairman, is item B1E, request approval of a Victims of Crime Act grant agreement between the Illinois Criminal Justice Information Authority and the County of McLean for the Children's Advocacy Center. Please note the web link that is listed there. The motion, the presentation is found on pages 104 through 107, and I'll move that.
Motion by Chairman Gordon. Is there a second? Second by Member Cavallini. Comments or questions? All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion has carried. Thank you, sir.
Our general report can be found in the unapproved committee minutes of pages 15 through 21, and I'll be happy to answer any questions, sir.
Thank you. We'll move on to the report of the Finance Committee. Chairman Selzer.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Would be 3 items for action. The first is request approval of an ordinance by the McLean County Board amending Chapter 116, Purchasing and Contracting, Article 2 in the McLean County Code, and I would so move that.
Motion by Chairman Selzer, second by Member Metzger. Comments or questions? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion is carried.
Thank you. The next item we bring is a request for approval of an ordinance by the McLean County Board amending Chapter 108, Personnel Policies and Procedures, Article 7, Miscellaneous Benefits and Entitlements, Section 65, Travel and Business Expense Reimbursement in the McLean County Code, and I would move that.
Motion by Chairman Selzer, second by Member Woolrapp. Comments or questions? All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? The motion has carried.
And then I have last item for action is request approval of an emergency appropriation ordinance to the McLean County Board, amending the McLean County fiscal year 2018 combined annual appropriation and budget ordinance for the auditor's office, and I would move that.
Motion by Chairman Selzer, second by Member Solner. This will require 2/3 vote. Any comments or discussion at this time? If none, all in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? The motion has carried. Are there any dissenting votes? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you.
I have one other item I want to present for information. As you know, I serve on the Convention and Visitors Bureau Board as a representative of the county. They're currently going through some changes. The intergovernmental agreement has expired. Bloomington and Normal are changing the funding formula for the Convention and Visitors Bureau. And as such, they're in the process of changing the bylaws. So the county will no longer have an automatic seat on the Convention and Visitors Bureau Board. Rather, they're going to be appointed seats by the mayors, since that's where the funding comes from. So you'll be seeing more about that. That's everything I know about it right now. Just wanted to make sure you're all informed. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We'll move on to the report of the Health Committee Chair Member Schaefer.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The Health Committee has no items for action today, and our general report can be found on pages 28 through 32 of the unapproved minutes packet.
Thank you. We'll move on to the report of the Land Use and Development Committee Chair Member Erickson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The Land Use and Development Committee has 4 items to be presented for action. I will start out with item E1A, request by staff to approve a county watersheds management program intergovernmental agreement with the city of Bloomington, the town of Normal, and the Mclean County Soil and Water Conservation District, and I so move.
Motion by Chairman Erickson, second by Member Gordon. Comments or questions? All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? The motion has carried.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The next item is item C1A. Approve the request of Hayworth Solar LLC by Geronimo Energy in case SU-18-11 on parcel 34-07-400-004. It is requesting a special use to allow a solar-powered generating facility in the Agriculture District on property in Funks Grove Township, immediately southwest of the intersection of 50 North Road and 700 East Road, Perens County Highway 45, close parens, and I so move.
Motion by Chairman Erickson, second by Member Woolrab. You please refer to page 1 on your packet if you have not done so. Any comments or questions? Member Schaefer.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And this is going to apply to all 3 of these. I mean, I guess you could have probably even grouped them together. I don't have any problem with solar energy. My problem is with the amount of farmland and the pieces of farmland that two of these especially have on the quality of the soil. And I have not seen any evidence of, I mean, they talk about the, leaving it fallow and putting the cover crops and things like that, but I haven't seen any evidence yet at any of these solar farms as to any studies that have been done to say that this is going to be put back the same way it was before it happened. And so, I mean, they talk about it a little bit, but I'm not convinced yet on that. And I would like, and basically the reason I'm saying this is I'd like to see the ZBA look at these kinds of things a little bit deeper. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments or questions? Member Erickson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The Land Use Committee has been looking at this. You'll notice on page 30, there's items 9 and 10. We specifically had a committee meeting on that. I think it was in July. And we were talking with the McLean County Farm Bureau about the issue of, I think, addressing Ms. Schaefer's concerns. So we are looking at that. I think the reason 9 and 10 are in there was because of our Land Use Committee meeting in July, that we were requesting that more be put in there. We're probably going to look to codify that at some point. but that is in there. I think that's a fair representation of what we were doing, but that's why 9 and 10 were added in there, was to try to provide some protection to the taxpayer when they back out and to address Ms. Schaefer's concerns. So I did want to point that out to everybody on the board.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions? Member Metzger.
And I did attend that meeting, and I appreciated that opportunity to listen to the Farm Bureau testify on their opinions related to this situation of taking prime farm ground out of production. Potentially, yes, it may come back. We don't know that for sure. As Member Erickson identified, there are points that will try to ensure that will take place. I'm not sure it will. However, we have a 20-year comprehensive plan, and we are absolutely ignoring it. We either need to redo the comprehensive plan and allow for these kinds of things to take place on prime farmland, or we don't. And if we have a plan, I think we need to follow it. So I'm not going to vote in favor of these because of that stipulation. I would suggest that we relook at it if we're going to continue to bring this out. In addition, I think we need to realize that when we take this farm ground out of production, it actually hinders those who farm, not necessarily those who are the landowners, because it actually causes land rent to increase because they can't compete. Any true farmer cannot compete with the high rents that these solar and wind farms are creating in our community.
Thank you. Member Rankin.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I've continued to be confused about this issue. It tends to keep coming up, and I know it's created some strange bedfellows, I think, on the McLean County Board multiple times. I keep hearing prime farm ground coming out of production. I think that phrase is really important, coming out of production. Coming out of production to produce crops, sure, right, for right now. But isn't solar also a production? It is a landowner choosing to use their land in whatever way it is that they see fit. And that is production in itself. Production is production. And in this day and age where we are seeing from our federal government punitive tariffs, I don't blame any farmer, whether they're a true farmer or not, and I'm not certain I understand what the difference is between a true farmer and a false farmer, but we'll go here with the true farmers. I'm not sure why I wouldn't move my production into solar as well. If I'm attempting to earn on the land that I own, why is someone else telling me that I can't do that? We have continually presented evidence that they believe, the ZBA has now done this a couple of times, by saying that the land, to their best knowledge, will not be affected forever. And yet we continually come back and say, no, no, no. I think that what people get out of this is that if they don't like the solar farms, great, vote them down. Just vote no, right? Rather than this continual effort to sit and fight and go back and forth. I think that the vast majority of this board sees that this is a logical use of a landowner's property and one that is well within their rights. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Other comments or questions? Member Soldner.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I will agree with Member Rankin on his comments. Again, in my mind, it's not taking it out of production. It's no different than if I farmed and I wanted to plant 40 acres of peas or beets or whatever. Solar energy is just another form of it's another product. I think, actually, I believe the fact that the ground's going to be out of grain production for some time, it's going to actually let that ground follow, and it will actually be better for the ground. And I agree that this has been looked at a couple of times with from the ZBA. It's come back with their approval, and I believe we just need to go ahead and move forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Other comments? Mr. Sulzer.
Mr. Chairman, first of all,
if I want to produce clothes, is that production? So all I have to go on is what our code says, and I totally agree with Mrs. Metzger, because this has been brought up, and Mr. Rankin, time and time again. So if you look under the definitions in our code, I was trying to find it now so I don't get misquote anything, but it talks about farming as being something with crops and animals. Even though the code does allow for wind farms and solar farms, the code contradicts itself. So I still would encourage us to say that wind and sun energy are in fact crops, because our code, the preamble to our code, says that we are to protect our farm ground, the most precious farm ground for crop production in the area, anywhere, not anywhere, I'm sure there's another spot that's a little better, but, and so that's what conflicts me. It conflicts me when we do this, when we have people from the Farm Bureau, or we have people from, better stated, some of our union brethren who want the jobs, but they want the code. I'm confused. And then as elected members of this board, we're all criticized by other people for what we do or what we say or how we do it. So I think we need to get ourselves in line, the code lined up properly. I mean, I plan to support this. Sometimes I question why I support this with the criticism you get from all sides, but I do think we need to take a look at our definitions in that part of the code. Thank you.
Thank you. Who was next? I think Member Woolrab was next.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think the implication here is that the Farm Bureau somehow doesn't support this use of farmland like this, and that in fact is not what they told us. They said that they perhaps sometime in the far distant future, if there got to be way too much farmland out of production, they would question it. But right now they support the use of people using the farmland as they see fit in this kind of way. If this is what they want to do with their farmland, put solar panels on it, they should be able to farm the sun. And I think we can question, if we're concerned about being able to feed ourselves, up to 30% or more of the corn that's raised in McLean County is going to ethanol production. So rather than producing corn for ethanol, let's put solar panels and use it for production of energy through the sun. Thank you.
Thank you. Member Robustelli.
Mr. Chairman, just a point of order and a question here. My understanding was during these proceedings, we are supposed to stay focused on the evidence that was presented during the special use hearing. And I'm hearing a lot of new information, questions raised, things that I don't think were part of the evidence that was submitted during
and I don't hearings. Know without referring to the evidence.
I just want to remind or get everybody a sense that there's a lot of information that's being thrown around here that is not supposed to be, if I understand it, if it wasn't submitted as evidence, considered at this time for this project.
We'll take that into advisement. I don't know what all was testified at the hearing at the time. Let's try to stick to the best we can. Member Cavallini.
I can't help but wonder if there is a solution to this issue in which you can have the best of both possible worlds. How many times do the solar companies approach, like the city of Bloomington, and look at the land to the west side of the city, which at one time was railroad land? A very active railroad industry was once in this community, but it's basically unused. But it potentially has, I would think, some value if in fact you would install solar arrays in that part of the county. Has that been investigated? Or, to think really outside the box, what about Rivian? You got acres and acres of concrete.
That's all right. Hang on.
You got acres and acres of concrete.
In all due respect, I've been informed by the staff just as you began talking, and I concur that we do have to stick to the evidence as Member Robustelli presented. And so I'm going to have to shut off a debate on this at this time. Thank you very much. My apologies to you, sir, because I allow other people to speak before you at that time. I think probably we should at this point in time stick with it as under advice.
Stick to the evidence that was provided in the zoning board.
I don't know what the zoning board period. Do we have that in front of us at this time? That's the question. Okay, thank you. Member Gordon.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. In response to the comment just made with regard to
Get the page number.
paying close attention and keeping our attention on what was reported at the ZBA hearing, I would note that even though we're discussing just the first of these three, on pages 20, 25, and 30 in paragraph 7, there is reference to a percentage up to 35% of corn grown in McLean County being used to make ethanol. That was mentioned earlier before the question was raised about evidence, about focusing only on evidence from the ZBA. Just wanted to make the point that is in the report of the ZBA.
We should all refer to the pages in the packet of the testimony for a minute. Do you have those pages? Pages 20, as Mr. Gordon has done. 23 through 26 is C1A at the time. 18 to the first one. Thank you. So let's take a moment so we can stay on track here with our legal requirements on this. I'm going to end up being a referee on who speaks about what each time. I'm not sure what the animals are thinking about all this as well, but we'll see. Okay, can we try to follow this the best we can? I may ask for help, so make sure we're staying on track with our debate. Thank you for the point, sir. Thank you for your cooperation, Member Cavallini, as well. And we will move on from here. Are there other comments, Mr. Gordon, that you still have the floor? Is there anyone else at this time? Member Murphy.
I think that as we go through this, you can see that the ZBA and the Land Use Committee did a thorough job on this. As a farmer, I am concerned about losing farmland, but I'm also very much a property rights person. And if a person wants to put I hate to agree with Member Rankin again, there's some bad stuff going on here.
Some of this has to stop, I think. Well, we'll figure it out. Okay, thank you.
But I believe that if a landowner, this is their land, and as long as they are not hurting their neighbors, they can do with it what they please.
Are there any other comments at this time? Member Schaefer, round two for you.
I just want to clarify. I'm not saying that we should do this or not do this. I'm just asking because one of the things it says is that after the subject property is returned to its original condition. And I'm just saying I would like more evidence from the ZBA when they bring these forward to show us that. That is what I would, I mean, the things that Mr. Erickson mentioned, you know, about the decommissioning costs and, you know, putting money into bonds and stuff like that, that doesn't put the farmland back in its original condition. And that is what I'm looking for. And I'm just asking that the ZBA pursue that more.
All right, thank you. Can we move on? Member Erickson, round two for you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yes, I mean, any member is welcome to come to the next Land Use Committee meeting. I mean, it is my intention to try to put this on the agenda at that meeting, so unless I get overruled. You know, so no, there's a chairman up there who could overrule me, but, you know, I mean, so that is my intention. So I think if people have strong feelings about it, please come to Land Use and we can address it there.
Thank you. Appreciate that very much. Member Sigalbiano.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Seems like month after month we're here debating a recommendation has been sent to us by the Zoning Board of Appeals. And they're honest and honorable people, and this board appointed each and every one of them. This issue comes to us with unanimous decision. And I've been on the board long enough to hear the same old cry about saving farmland. And I remember several years ago when we were trying to site a gravel pit, and a rural farmer out in the Danvers area who farmed several hundreds of acres said, you know what, they need to take more land out of production. That was his comment. Whether that's true today or not, I don't know. Most important thing is every member of this board could appear before the Zoning Board of Appeal as a citizen of McLean County and voice their concerns. But month after month, we get that here at the board when it should be, as Mr. Erickson said, either at the Land Use Committee or at the open meetings that the Zoning Board of Appeal. Those are all sworn testimony that can be brought forth in their deliberation and in their recommendation. And I think sometimes we need to be reminded that we appointed them because we trust in them and we respect them. And once again, this issue comes to us with unanimous decision, and I'll support it.
Thank you. Member Johnson.
This legal question, quickly, I guess it should be just a yes or no, but to address Member Schaefer's concern about it, returning the land to its original form, is there something in the county code or something in McLean County system that is a legal trigger, something that can be enforced, something that we as a county board can enact to enforce that this would be seen through, if that's a part of maybe an end plan for this land use?
I'll refer to legal staff. It's my opinion on this that this would require a movement of a text amendment type of nature. Member. That's all right. Mr. Chambers.
I'm gonna give you an attorney's answer here, not necessarily a legal answer. I think you guys could certainly try to put some mechanisms in place for that, but it's not going to be something where you just need to add one sentence or two. You could certainly do things with bonding requirements, contractual requirements for some of these parties, but that's probably going to be an extensive process that you're going to have to go back and go through.
We're about finished with this discussion, I think. Member Soldner, round two for you.
Briefly, isn't that what the decommissioning plan is for? I'm just asking. It was in my opinion that the $100,000 per megawatt or $25,000 per megawatt was to see that the structure was removed, the concrete was removed, and that the farmland was put back to the original shape. I mean, that's just my.
My concern was to an actual oversight enforcement.
Okay, now we're getting off the subject here a little bit, I believe. I've got a motion on the floor. I'm going to call the question as presented. C1A, we will take it in consideration in the minutes. Member Schaefer's request as well as Member Erickson's offer to take this to Land Use Committee. For now, all in favor as presented, please say aye. Oppose? Nay. Okay, let's take a roll call vote on this. Chairman won't vote on this.
Scott Murphy?
Yes.
Eric Rankin?
Yes.
Carla Robustelli? Yes. Susan Schaefer? Yes. Ryan Scritchlow?
Yes.
Paul Segabiano?
Yes.
David Seltzer?
Yes.
James Solner?
Yes.
George Wendt?
Yes.
Lori Walreb?
Yes.
Josh Barnett?
Yes.
Jacob Beard? Yes. William Casely?
Yes.
Don Cavallini?
No.
Chuck Erickson?
Yes.
George Gordon?
Yes.
Mark Johnson?
Yes.
Randall Martin?
Yes.
Catherine Metzger?
No.
Okay.
17 yeses, 2 noes, and the motion's carried. Let's move on. Item C1B.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I don't know the process to group it as Can I group, or, can we group them as one or take them separately? Take them separately? Okay. Item C1B, approve the request of Tawanda Solar LLC by Cypress Creek Renewables in case SU-18-14 on parcels 20-23-400-009 and 20-23-400-010. It is requesting a special use to allow a solar power generating facility in the agricultural district on property located in Dale Township, immediately southeast of the intersection of 1075 East Road and Scottsdale Avenue. And I so move.
Motion by Chairman Erickson, second by Member Scritchlow. Are there comments or questions?
Call the question.
Member Casely has called the question. Is there objection? If none, all in favor of the resolution as presented, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion has, I'm sorry? Okay. Can we record the negative votes here? Member Metzger, who else, please? Member Cavallini. Thank you. The motion has carried. We'll move on, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Item C1C, approve the request of ASD Mclean, Illinois Solar 1 LLC by AMP Solar Development, Inc. in case SU-18-15 on parcel 22-31-100-003. It is requesting a special use to allow a solar power generating facility in the agricultural district on property located in Old Town Township, immediately northwest of the intersection of 850 North Road, Extended and Interstate I-74, and approximately 4/5 of a mile west of 1900 East Road. And I so move.
Motion by Member Chairman Erickson, second by Member Worab. Comments or questions? Member Casely has called the question. Is there an objection? If none, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
Negative votes should be recorded for Member Cavallini and Member Metzger. Motion has carried. Thank you, sir. We'll move on.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The Land Use and Development Committee has no other items to be presented for action, and our report is on page 40 through 42 of the unapproved minutes. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll move on to the report of the Transportation Committee. I'm sorry, Chairman Casely.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We have no items to present for action. We do thank Member Cavallini, our ranking member of the committee, for presiding over the Transportation Committee in the absence of the chairman and the vice chairman of the committee. And our general report is found on pages 34 through 37.
Thank you. We'll move on to the report of the Property Committee. Chairman Segoviano.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We have one item for action, and it's in regards to software for the addition to the Law and Justice Center and request approval of emergency appropriation ordinance amending the McLean County fiscal year 2018 combined annual appropriation budget ordinance for its facilities department. I would so move.
This requires a 2/3 vote. There is a motion by Chairman Segoviano, second by Member Cavallini. Comments or questions? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Are there any dissenting votes to be recorded? If none, the motion carries unanimously.
Our minutes can be found on pages of 38 and 39 on the unapproved minute packet.
Thank you very much. We'll move on to the report of the County Administrator, Mr. Wasson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have nothing for the board today other than the presentation that will be provided by Ms. Malott.
I'd like to introduce to you, if you haven't already met, our Behavioral Health Coordinating Council Supervisor, Ms. Tricia Malott. And because of the time limitation we had on our Executive Committee meeting last Tuesday, we have moved the quarterly report for Ms. Malott to today's meeting. So if you'll please give her your attention and check their screen as well. Thank you. Click on the one top there on the other side. Other side.
Microphones are not my forte.
Now we're good. Okay. So I want to take a moment and just advise you of some of the work of the Behavioral Health Coordinating Council supervisor and some team members within the county also. In April, Mclean County was selected as a best practices implementation team to attend the Best Practices Implementation Academy in Virginia as part of a SAMHSA Gaines and Policy Research Associates task. And Judge Foley, Cassie Taylor from Court Services, and Camille Rodriguez, the administrator of the health department, and I were in attendance. And part of what we worked on while we were there was creating a strategic action plan for the county with regard to the crossover of the criminal justice system and behavioral health. Some of the priority areas that we identified were to really implement something concrete with regard to our initiatives within the county, further prioritize them, and also identify what our communication plan is and who is overseeing what with regard to that. To be able to identify some of the progress we've done with that, we have spoken to both the county administrator and the assistant county administrator, and Ms. Rodriguez and I communicate regularly about where we're at with our different steps and are working with our team as a whole to make sure that we're all on the same page and moving forward with the plan. The other area we identified was to make sure that we identify and address the needs of individuals who are unfit to stand trial. In the time that has since passed since this in April, and now the county and members from the county representing different agencies met with the Department of Human Services, ICEJA, to really talk about where our needs are and what our limitations are, and why Mclean County has a higher number of individuals being referred to state institutions rather than receiving treatment within the county. We also really wanted to work on identifying the behavioral health needs, and that took a few different components of increasing the exchange of case-specific information across systems. Right now, largely HIPAA plays a part in this, but one of the other things that plays a part in the limitation of information sharing is the Illinois Mental Health Statute, and it is more restrictive than HIPAA. So in terms of progress on this particular item, one thing that is currently in process is what's known as a business associate agreement between Advocate Broman and Mclean County, which will allow those two entities to be able to share information and better serve the individuals that are crossing over, either between the jail and the ED or any other programs that we may have in place. We also talked about the benefit of implementing a universal mental health screening tool in the jail and having it be done at the time of booking on all individuals. This also would increase the amount of data collection and a better and more universal understanding of who is identified as having a mental health or behavioral health need, rather than it coming perhaps anecdotally or later in the process. We also prioritize developing mental health assessment tools for first responders, and I have been in contact with a couple of different researchers with universities that are creating this, and as it stands right now, there's a tool being developed out of NYU Law that is in the beta testing process, and we will be able to have access to it when that is complete. We look to expand mental health first aid, achieve 100% CIT training within our community, increase community education of mental health services and resources, and also work to facilitate organization of all that the jail staff are doing and helping formalize all of those processes, because they're doing so much behind the scenes and making sure that everyone in the community knows what they're doing and how they're doing it, so that they also get the recognition for the work they're doing. Part of the community education is the Behavioral Health Community Forum, which I'll touch on a little bit later, but is set for Monday, October 8th. And that will be one way that more information is disseminated disseminated not only about what the county is doing, but also what resources are available within the community. We also prioritize that we need to expand services and connections at earlier intercept points. So developing awareness around our diversion options, but also increasing our diversion options. Developing an AOT program, deferred prosecution, a co-responder program, exploring pre-arrest programs, which are often known as the Living Room Project or LEAD, and enhancing discharge planning from jail. So some of the progress that we have made with regard to these topics is that we are in the process of working on an alternative transportation policy in partnership with local EMS, both hospitals, Chestnut, and our fire departments that would allow for the transportation of individuals who are not in need of emergency services but do need some type of stabilization. So they're not in an acute crisis, but are in need of something, so essentially a step down from the ED, and this would allow them to be transported to the crisis stabilization unit at Chestnut. The AOT Planning Committee has plans to reconvene, and in a recent conversation with Judge Foley, I know she is working on that part. We submitted a grant to the MacArthur Foundation and the Urban Institute for a virtual co-responder program, which would allow for the use of iPads with law enforcement and our mobile crisis team through Center for Human Services. And that would allow for almost immediate access to that crisis team member and for law enforcement to make a more prompt and more informed decision about what to do with an individual. And then there is a upcoming NOFO, a notice of funding opportunity from IDHS for a triage center, and it has not been released yet, but I have been in contact with both the Center for Human Services and Chestnut for potential collaboration for that when it does come out. Also in the spring, we submitted a grant to SAMHSA for an ACT program. ACT stands for Assertive Community Treatment, and it is a high level of outpatient care provided in a team basis to individuals with severe and chronic mental illness. These are the individuals who often are frequently involved in the system, either on the criminal justice side or the hospital side and the behavioral health care services side. I'll talk a little bit about the format of the team and the grant. It was proposed to be $678,000 per year for 5 years, with 50 consumers total by the end of the grant, and increasing incrementally by 10 consumers per year. At optimum capacity of 50 consumers, it is estimated that treatment would cost approximately just under $14,000 per individual. So the treatment team that we proposed would be a transdisciplinary team, and it's a unique model for a number of reasons. But it would be led by a licensed clinician, so that would either be an LCPC, LCSW, or a licensed psychologist. And that individual would be a county employee. There would be a program assistant who would also be a county employee. And through the grant, there is I believe we titled it a grants administrator, but it's a part-time position. And utilizing some of the resources we already have within the county and sharing an individual. But the team is largely comprised of service providers in our community who already have strengths in these areas. And so it would be utilizing members from the Center for Human Services, from Chestnut, and from Bridgeway. And some of the core services that are required for ACT and to meet fidelity require substance use treatment and a substance use specialist, an employment specialist, what's known as a certified recovery support specialist. There also would be a nurse, another case manager, and we would also share psychiatric time. So the way we have presented it as part of our grant application and for the program model is that the psychiatrist would be provided from Chestnut. However, it would be done via telehealth. And one of the unique features of our application is that it would allow us to adhere to the roots of ACT, which was that services were provided in the individual's home and environment that was more conducive to them. And so following that model, telehealth would allow one of the team members to take the iPad into the consumer's home. They would have their psychiatrist appointment in their home via that model. And the psychiatrist would then be able to see their living conditions, them in their natural environment as they make medication recommendations. Most of this slide I have already talked about, but one of the other features is that services are available 24/7. So while there are office hours, and that's when the bulk of the day occurs for services, the team is on call 24 hours a day, and it is separate and unique from the crisis team that already exists in town. If they were to get a call, they would refer to this particular team because all services are provided by this team for these individuals. And again, I talked about the unique feature of pulling from the strengths of the agencies that we're partnering with for this. Some of the goals are to reduce the number of emergency room visits and hospital bed days, decrease the number of shelter days, decrease the number of arrests and jail bed days, as well as increase the number of community individuals receiving and engaged in treatment. So we not only want to improve the stats for the folks that we're serving, but we also want to try to capture the folks who are not currently receiving services or are in and out of services. Improve the ability for them to live independently, and also increase the number of individuals in permanent housing, which ties to the next project that we have been working on, which is the Frequent User System Engagement Program, which is in short term known as FUSE. And more than 30 communities have already implemented a FUSE program or something similar. And the purpose of this is very similar and very much tied into our ACT grant application, which is to really address the individuals who are in and out of our justice system, in and out of our homeless shelters, and in and out of our emergency departments. And so, and I'm going to touch on a few different things that we've been doing in the midst of this FUSE project because so many things overlap. So one of the things that we have also been doing is there is a data match tool that we have been working with through the Corporation for Supportive Housing and the University of Chicago as part of the Data Driven Justice Initiative, I believe, or and that tool allows us to pull data from our jail system and look at the number of bookings, jail bed days, and as well as individuals. And then IT has further been sort of filtering out the individuals who have a mental illness indicator. In addition, it crosses over with HMIS data, and HMIS is our homeless management information system, which is managed by PATH through their Continuum of Care program. And so we're looking at that intersection. We are then also working in collaboration with the hospitals to try to better capture which of those folks that we're identifying are also being captured within the hospital system so that we're really addressing our highest need. So with FUSE, the first component is that integrated data. Then moving toward targeted supportive housing. The supportive piece is coming from a program like the ACT program I discussed, or a potential step down, which is known as community support teams. And then also identifying the pay for success model, and it can support scaled up supportive housing. So we anticipate that the individuals we're targeting have a history of homelessness. We know that some will have homelessness and criminal justice involvement, and some will have homelessness and healthcare involvement. And there will be an overlap of those who need supportive housing. So we propose connecting 10 people a year with supportive housing, including intensive support services. We also know that there are some individuals who will need a higher level of services and some who will not need as intensive services. So our target population is that intersection again. So much of what we're doing is really kind of weeding down into the nitty-gritty of the intersections in all of these groups. So We anticipate that approximately 5 per year will need an ACT level of services and a connection to permanent housing. Approximately 5 will need a lower level of care, which we're referring to as a CST level of care with permanent housing, and that we're potentially looking at 10 vouchers or subsidies per year. Some of our housing sources would be a mainstream voucher application, which is through HUD, and we coordinated with the Housing Authority of the City of Bloomington a couple of months ago for a mainstream housing voucher, and are awaiting that decision as to whether they'll be granted that. And it would open up more available vouchers to this target population. The Bloomington Housing Authority is also obviously one of our housing sources, looking at potentially partnering with other individuals or developers in town who may have an interest. Our continuum of care through PATH, and or any county or pay for success funded options. And I'll just point out on this slide, I like the end quote on here, which is that quality supportive housing cannot exist without comprehensive and flexible supportive services that meet the needs of the tenants. And that's kind of what drives all of this. So if we look at our success metric proposal, we have our participants referred, and there are set criteria. We house them. We start linking them with services. We get quarterly reports back from our housing participants in terms of how many days they're housed and where. We also then review jail and arrest data because, again, the goal is to keep them out of the systems they've been in for so long. So we're looking at reductions in usage. Our hospital partners would also submit quarterly reports. We then review and validate all of those. And then payments would be made potentially, and so this is a proposal, so this is not the final version, but payments would then be made quarterly based on the days the participant is spending in housing. And then at the end of 24 months for reductions. So we're looking at 2 different levels of potential success metrics, housing and reductions in use. So our next steps with regard to the FUSE program are really finalizing our target population estimates, finalizing that eligibility and enrollment pathway. So essentially, how are we going to put all of these steps in place and make it happen so everybody knows who to communicate with? Identifying our housing resources, determining an evaluation methodology, developing our preliminary financial model, and outreach to potential investors. And all of those are likely to be happening in the not so distant future. They're probably happening in the next 30 days is my guess. I mentioned our Behavioral Health Community Forum, which is on Monday, October 8th. I believe board members should have received your save the date in your mailboxes. If you did not receive one, please let me know. But it will be in Uptown Normal, and the town of Normal has sponsored and donated the use of the Normal Theater, and will be providing parking for our attendees that day so that there is minimal cost and fewer barriers for attendance. And we'll also be sharing space with the Marriott. We continue to plan. One of the new things with the forum this year is that we are having a congruent day of sessions for adolescents. And we'll be working to get the word out to schools and agencies and groups that have a tie into adolescents to try to get their participation there. There will also be some crossover sessions that are relatable to both adolescents and adults, so that it can be geared either toward individuals without children, but it could also be a time that if you're a parent with an adolescent, you can be in the same space, make sure your kid is still where they're supposed to be, and learn useful information about behavioral health for both of you. Some of our additional projects, I have already talked about several of these, so I'll skip down to the National Council on Behavioral Health. We did do an updated sequential intercept mapping in July and are awaiting the final report on that. But it was a new way to look at where are individuals entering the system and what steps can we put in place in order to assist with that, and where are we still lacking in some resources as a community, and best be able to plan for where our investment should be. We continue to explore other grant options, work with the Regional Housing Committee for affordable and supportive housing initiatives in the community, worked on House Bill 4100, and looking at exploring additional options for youth and adolescents and family with regard to the BHCC.
Thanks, Tricia. As you can see, she's got a lot going on for us, and she's been a welcome addition to our staff and in terms of behavioral health and to our county. I want to again remind everyone of the Mental Health Forum. This will be the second annual forum, and out at the Marriott and a Normal Theater. Tricia has a great planning committee of 20 members from all sources, all walks of social services and schools and et cetera for this program. It's on Columbus Day, so there will be no school, and so there's going to be a special section for adolescents and youth as well. I also want to follow up with what she said with all this, and there's a lot of acronyms and so on. But our Behavior Health Coordinating Council, which is made up of representatives from many organizations in this community, has been up and running, and it's a long time coming because of our work on achieving and obtaining data, as she has mentioned. We will have up and running a homeless housing case management transitional type of program in January. I'm correct, and it's a pilot project, as she said, starting with the identification of 10 homeless members in the community. That's what the SAMHSA grant is all about. If we do not receive the grant, we will supplement that with mental health tax money, sales tax money, and follow through to make sure that we are up and running. And I've been impatient for quite a long time, but we've done it properly, and we'll continue with other programs. And thank you very much for all that you've done as well. I also intend to promote, coming to you, Mr. Johnson, in a minute, our Behavioral Health Coordinating Council as chairman. We will be meeting, and I encourage all the board members to come, welcome the public as well. And it is, our next meeting is the second Friday in September. It's here in this room at 7:30 in the morning. And we always have a lot of great input from a lot of great community leaders in following through with our programs as well. I'm going to encourage as chairman also more collaboration between our Criminal Justice Coordinating Council because of the collaboration that's required with behavioral health as well. We're getting ready to open our new jail edition as well. And so we will be doing even more collaborating, and I know Tricia agrees with me, with our Criminal Justice Coordinating Council and our Behavioral Health Coordinating Council working side by side on a number of these projects. And I'm now done. Mr. Johnson, you have the floor.
Hey, thank you, Chairman. Tricia, thank you for all your hard work and your very informative presentation. I was just wanting to make sure that the public at large, I know that this was in our packet, this presentation was in our packet, where they need to contact you, or hopefully the county here can somehow get this up on the website, or at least we can let people know where they can read in depth on this, and then be able to, as the public can give us feedback on all these steps that we're taking. And then additionally, I have worked with the chairman in the past and been very excited to be able to see the growth that we've done with mental health strides in McLean County over the last 2 or 3 years. I've been involved personally in a program. It's a faith-based mental health program in the community going on for 10 years, and really hope to work with you in the future to see this. This is vital for our quality of life in McLean County, and we need to be reaching those in needs, and the homeless issue with mental health and those in the area is vital as well. We need to be supporting these people. Personally, I see that every week with the program I'm involved with. People come in with housing issues. It's just not getting a job. It's being able to have some stability in their life. So again, thank you, Tricia, and I hope that we can make her presentation available on the website or in some fashion for people to review.
Thank you, sir. We will do that, and thank you for an advisement. Are there other questions of Ms. Malott? Thank you, ma'am, and we'll continue to look forward to working with you with all these projects.
Thank you.
We'll move on to other business at this time. Do we have other, Member Schaefer?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. The McLean County Health Department would like to invite you to serve as a volunteer in an exercise designed to test our ability to quickly and efficiently dispense medications in the event of a large public health emergency. During the exercise, they're going to stimulate an emergency environment while volunteers acting as members of the public visit the point of dispensing site for medication. Also participating in this, the sheriff, EMA, the county administration, highway department, and probably some others. It is on September 14th from 8:15 in the morning to 11:30 in the morning at Redbird Arena. And if you're interested in that, please contact the Health Department Administrator, Ms. Rodriguez.
So information will be on the Health Department website for
I
that
believe
as well.
so, yes.
So people can access it.
Yes.
Thank you. Any other comments, other business, Member Gordon?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would like someone to straighten me out on an item that appeared earlier this morning on the Finance Committee agenda that I did not find on the County Board agenda. And that was actually all three of the items that came to Finance this morning, I gather were approved, but the board didn't act on them to my knowledge. Am I missing something? The answer probably is yes, but tell me where to look.
I'm not sure I know. Can anybody help, Member Gordon?
Are you referring to the polling places at exec?
Well, polling places, well, all of them, A1, A, B, C. Those came through Finance.
Were they on the consent?
No, they weren't. So if I'm missing where they are located, all I'm asking is where is it?
As I recall, that was in stand-up?
Yes.
Is that what you're referring to?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, and my question is, do polling places come to the full board, or are those just to the Finance Committee?
That's a good question.
I know people want them to come to the full board. I'm not sure where they went in the past. Yeah. Yeah, I don't know.
We'll take a minute and get this, see if we can come up with the proper resolution for this.
Thank you. I guess the other reason that I bring this up is that the last sentence in the memo from County Clerk Kathy Michael to Chairman Selzer of Finance reads, as we must provide the affected voters with proper statutorily required notice, we act that the county board act on our request as quickly as possible.
Yes.
And that's...
See.
So the transfers are addressed under transfers and bills. The critical hiring positions only comes to the Finance Committee. It does not come to the full board. You are absolutely, I believe, correct. We believe that that the polling place request does require full board approval, and has not appeared on the agenda today for the county board. So I'm sorry, it does appear on the, I apologize, it does appear on the consent agenda. It is E63.
I'm on page 2, right?
Thank you. You have now told me where it was.
Which is E3C.
Thank you. So we did approve it as required.
Yes, as part of the consent
All right.
agenda.
Thank you. Sorry, I missed that earlier.
That's okay. Well, that happens. Thank you very much. Member Solner.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As an unofficial ambassador to all events in the southeastern part of McLean County, I ask you to join me at the Leroy Fall Festival. It runs tonight through Friday night from 6 to 9 and Saturday from 12 to 9. And we look at it as small town friendliness and big city fun. So if you can make it at all, I urge you to come. Thank you.
Thank you, Ambassador Solner. I'm sure that Sheriff Sandage and I in our childhood days have some fond memories of the Leroy Fall Festival as well. Anyone else? If not, we'll move on, and I have bills to pay. These have been reviewed and approved and submitted from our auditor in the amount of $6,161,622.32. Is there a motion to approve the bills as presented? Member Cavallini, is there a second? Second by Member Casely. All in favor of approving the bills, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Thank you very much. The motion has carried. I want to thank all of you for your extra time and participation and scrutiny and input to me with our state's attorney's appointment and all, and appreciate all that we've done here and continue the good hard work. Thank you very much, and we'll move on. This meeting is adjourned.